You ever see one of those charts about modern life and it looks like something just snapped right around the early 1970s? It's a really weird and kind of fascinating pattern. So today we're going to dig in and try to figure out what exactly went down in one of the most important, but maybe least understood years in recent history, 1971.
So yeah, what did happen in 1971? On the surface, it seems like just another year. But when you start looking at the data, you see it's the moment when all these massive trends in economics, in society, just suddenly take a hard right turn. It's almost like the world was following one set of rules, and then overnight, someone completely rewrote the rulebook.
Okay, check this out. For decades, we had this simple, unwritten deal. If you worked harder and got more productive, you made more money. Makes sense, right? Effort equals reward. But look what happens right after 1971. That connection completely shatters. Productivity keeps on soaring, but for the average family, income just stops. It flatlines. The link is totally broken. And the big question is, why?
And it wasn't just wages. The U.S. national debt tells the exact same story. For years and years, it was there, but it was more or less under control. Then, after 1971, boom, it goes absolutely vertical. It's an explosion of debt that's basically been going ever since. You have to understand these charts aren't a coincidence. They're symptoms. They're all clues pointing to one single massive event.
To really get what happened, we've got to jump in a time machine. We need to go back to a world that played by a totally different set of rules. A world that was built on a very specific promise. A promise made in gold. Picture this. It's 1944. World War II has left the world in shambles. So leaders from 44 countries get together to figure out a new global financial system. And the plan they came up with was this. The US dollar would be the center of everything, the world's reserve currency. But, and this is the key part, it came with a rock-solid promise. Any country at any time could trade their US dollars back to the US Treasury for actual physical gold at a fixed price of $35 an ounce. Now, this promise to hand over gold wasn't just for show. It acted like an automatic brake on how much money the US government could create. They couldn't just fire up the printing presses, because if other countries thought they were printing too much, they just show up and say, "We'll take our gold now, thank you." It basically forced everyone to be fiscally responsible. So this is the fundamental difference between then and now. Before 71, the dollar's supply was physically limited by how much gold was in the vaults. Its value was anchored to something real. After 71, we switched to what's called a fiat system. Fiat is just Latin for let it be done. The money has value just because the government says so. There's no limit to how much can be created. It's backed by nothing but trust. And for a good while, this system actually worked. But by the late 1960s, that automatic brake was starting to squeal. The system was under stress. And that promise, it was about to be broken on one single night that changed literally everything. So in the 60s, the US was spending a ton of money on the Vietnam War, on big social programs at home. To pay for it all, they were printing way more dollars than they actually had gold to back them up. And, other countries started to notice. The French president Charles de Gaulle got famous for calling out America's exorbitant privilege. But France didn't just talk. They sent a literal warship to New York Harbor to pick up their gold. This kicked off a massive run on America's gold reserves. The whole thing was about to collapse. So, on the night of August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon gets on TV and makes this bombshell announcement. He was, in his words, temporarily suspending the ability to convert dollars into gold. Well, here's the kicker. That temporary measure is now more than 50 years old. In that one moment, the gold standard was over. And that brings us right back to our crazy-looking charts. With that automatic brake gone, the world entered a completely new economic era. So now we can finally start connecting the dots between that decision back in 71 and all those trends we saw at the start. Well, the most immediate effect was on the value of your money. With nothing holding it back, the dollar's purchasing power just started to melt away. To put it in perspective, to buy what you could with a single dollar in 1971, you need more than $8 today. That's the power of inflation, and it really took off after this moment. So you might be asking, who benefits from all this? Well, there's this old economic idea called the Cantillon effect, and it's pretty simple. When new money gets created, it doesn't spread out evenly. The people who get their hands on it first, think big banks, governments, major corporations, get to spend it while prices are still low. By the time that money trickles down to everybody else, prices have already gone up.
And you can literally see this effect play out in the data on wealth inequality. For decades, the share of income going to the top 1% was actually falling, and it hit its lowest point ever, right around 1971. After the gold link was cut, the trend does a complete 180 and shoots upward. You could argue this is the Cantillon effect in action, as new money flowed into financial assets, making the rich much richer.
And the ripples just keep spreading. According to the source material, this one economic change lines up with all sorts of other shifts in society. It got harder to buy a house. People started getting married and having kids later. For many families, 2 incomes became a necessity, not a choice. Even the food we eat changed, with things like shrinkflation becoming normal. And as the economic gap widened, so did political divisions.
So, if this is the world that was created after 1971, it really makes you wonder, is this system going to last forever, or is it just another phase in a much longer story? Let's take a look at what might be coming next. You know, throughout history, different forms of money tend to follow a pretty predictable cycle. You start with something real, hard money, like gold. Then you get representative money, paper notes that are just claims on that gold. Eventually, governments break that link, and you end up with pure fiat money, which is based only on trust. The thing is, historically, that last stage, it often ends with a crisis of confidence, and people go searching for real, hard money again.
So if people today were to search for a new anchor, a new hard money, 2 main candidates seem to pop up. Gold, the old champion, and Bitcoin, the digital challenger. They both have scarcity. One is scarce because of physics, the other because of math. But one is heavy and physical. The other is digital and instant. It's a fascinating contrast between thousands of years of history and the cutting edge of technology.
What's really wild is that the famous economist F.A. Hayek basically predicted this dilemma decades ago. He wrote this long before the internet, long before anyone had even dreamed of Bitcoin. He said he believed the only way to get good money again was to take it out of the hands of government by inventing some kind of technology, something that they just can't stop. You know, for almost all of human history, the money we use has been something we've inherited and adapted. But when you look at the strange world we've lived in since 1971, and you see the new technologies emerging today, it leaves you with a really big question. Will the future of our money be something we simply inherit, or will it be something we invent?